Trauma is quite the buzzword in our society. The definition of trauma is actually more intricate than that. It has to be, because it can't just be difficult, stressful situations. So in one case, one person is traumatized, and in the other case, the person isn't traumatized, even though it's the exact same situation. Hi guys, welcome to You Are Unlocked, a place to help you unlock who you really are in a way that's integrated and holistic. My name's Una and I'm so glad you're here. So in the last video, we talked about how we should pursue the things that we really want in life and not being complacent or acting like we're powerless. But sometimes when we really do want to make a change, and sometimes we know exactly what we need to do as a first step, for some reason we just can't push past the internal barriers that are holding us back from taking that first step. It's like a block. It's everything within us wants to move forward, but we just can't get the action done, or we just keep procrastinating. And usually the internal block to getting started is actually because of trauma. So the trauma that we've experienced in the past is preventing us from moving forward in the future because it's unresolved. And so our past is actually holding us back from having the stamina, the clarity, the strategy to move forward. Trauma is quite the buzzword in our society, especially in this day and age when mental health is being more widely discussed and it's more common for people to talk about mental health without there being such a stigma around it. But just because it's a buzzword in society doesn't mean that we actually understand what it is. And it's really important to understand what it is, because if we can't understand what trauma is, it's hard to identify when it's happened in the past to us. And then if we can't identify it, we can't go about seeking to heal it and resolve it. And as I just mentioned previously, if we can't heal and resolve the trauma, it often holds us back from moving forward in the direction that we want to go in, or it keeps us from being able to do the things that we want to do through actions like procrastination or avoidance, or thinking about something, ruminating on something, but not actually having the ability to put action to what we're thinking about. So Mind UK describes trauma as when we experience something very stressful or distressing that we find difficult to cope with, or we feel as if it is out of our control. But you can probably go through your life and find quite a few situations that were really stressful, difficult to cope with, or you felt like were slightly out of your control, but they didn't leave you in a traumatized state. I know I can. For example, when I was in school and doing studying, I found exam season really difficult to cope with and quite stressful. But I wouldn't say that after exam season finished, it left me traumatized. So I think the definition of trauma is actually more intricate than that. It has to be, because it can't just be difficult, stressful situations that go unresolved, since we probably have all experienced that and experienced some type of stress, but it hasn't left us in a broken state. But first, if we look at what is being untraumatized, I would say that living in an untraumatized state, or experiencing a state where there's no trauma within us, is a place where you feel connected and whole with yourself. So there's a lot of self-belief, self-worth. You feel stable and grounded in yourself. When things come at you from life, you know how to navigate it and you have the tools to overcome it. Even though it may be difficult, your core self-beliefs allow you to embrace it and take those situations in as an area and a space for growth and expansion, rather than hurting, hindering you, stopping you, or stalling you from going forward. With that in mind, I would then describe trauma as situations that arise in life that cause that internal self-belief, self-awareness, love, grounding, stability to shake, crack, and break, and they leave you in a state where you no longer feel whole, connected, and a sense of clarity within yourself. Therefore, trauma can be quite subjective because you can have the same situation occur to two different people, and one may lose stability, self-awareness, and grounding, whereas the other doesn't. So in one case, one person is traumatized, and in the other case, the person isn't traumatized, even though it's the exact same situation. So trauma can't actually be the experience itself. It's more how it impacts the person who's experiencing that external situation, rearranges things within them, or doesn't rearrange it if they are untraumatized by the event, and the outcome and consequences of the processing of that situation. To illustrate this, I'm going to give you an example. So let's say a company exists, and this company decides to make a portion of their employees redundant. So they go about firing different employees in their company due to external factors or reasons outside of their control. So the company can hand out redundancies to multiple people. And let's use person one as an example. So person one grew up in a family where they weren't affirmed. They didn't feel a lot of love when they were growing up. They were never told that they were good based off of who they are. All of the affirmation that they received through education, sports, different things that they pursued was always based on the outcome. So when they did well in school, they received praise from their peers, their parents, their teachers, and people around them. When they did badly in school, or they got grades that weren't that great, they received negative comments from the different people in their life and around them. This then creates a foundation, a core belief within them that I am only as good as my external situations. So when life is going well, as the world defines it, so I'm making money, I'm getting new opportunities, I'm expanding in ways that the world recognizes, then I'm good and I feel good about myself. But this also necessitates the opposite. So when life is going not so well as the world defines it, when the person is losing money, when they're not getting opportunities, when they're not progressing in the ways that they like or they would want to, then their core belief system within them that was built up early in childhood says that they need to feel bad about themselves because how they feel about themselves is always based on external factors. This is really common in households where growing up, parents had a heavy emphasis on performance. So you always need to do super well. You always need to get the A's in school, get the A stars. And failure is seen as defeat or something that is negative. It actually builds a core belief within the child, which stays in the adult as they grow up unless they address it, that I am only as good as my external results. This is person one. And then person two grows up in a different household, and let's say that their parents, their peers, their teachers always affirm them just off of who they are. No matter what their external situation looked like, they were always told that they are loved, that they're amazing, that even if they're finding things difficult and the results aren't as they would want it to be, that they have the capabilities and the abilities to overcome anything that they're currently struggling with. This creates a core belief system within person two that their worth, their worthiness, and how they feel about themselves is never dependent on external factors. Just them being them, who they are, feeling connected with themselves is what makes them worthy. And since that can never be taken away from them, no matter what happens externally, how they feel about themselves can't be shifted by that or shaken or changed. Or it would be very difficult to shift, shake and change how good that they feel about themselves, because it was never about the external factors in the first place. So back to the company, let's say the company, person one and person two are both working at this place and the company hands out redundancies. Since this external situation is the basis upon which person one feels good about themselves, when they receive that news and they receive that letter, it enters into their core belief systems that they established usually early in their life. And their core belief system processes the external situation and tells them that based on your core beliefs, you need to feel bad about yourself. You've just lost your job. You've just lost opportunities. You've just lost an income stream. Your external situations are going badly. Therefore, you need to feel bad about yourself. And that is obviously a very stressful, chaotic state and mindset to be in and have, or thoughts to arise. And so person one experiences that situation as traumatic. Whereas for person two, when the news comes out and that news enters into them, into their core belief system processes it as, well, okay, this external situation may have been unexpected or unhelpful for the original goals that we had, but us feeling good about ourselves, stable, grounded, connected, was never based on anything external to begin with. Therefore, I don't feel shaken. I don't feel disconnected from myself. I don't feel unworthy. I'm just going to take this situation as something that's arisen in life, and now I'm going to shift, pivot and change into a new direction. I can explore new passions, maybe explore a new workplace and change the situation around for my best interests eventually, even though it's not what I had originally planned. And that person isn't traumatized by the situation. So the same situation happened to two different people and two completely different results occurred. Person one is traumatized and person two is untraumatized, because trauma isn't actually based on the external situation. It's based on how we process it and deal with it internally. And that's not to say that certain situations aren't very, very, very difficult not to experience trauma with. There are just situations in the world that can be completely shattering to experience, and it can feel like I have no idea how to process this, resolve this, I don't know what tools to use, and so the trauma enters into a person. So it's really hard to decipher, sort through and progress forward with, especially for young children who just may not have got to the point in their developmental stage where they're able to understand who they are, understand the tools that are out there to help them overcome difficult situations. So when something traumatic happens, it's just completely overwhelming and they need to go into coping mechanisms that they may not even recognize that they're doing, such as dissociation, numbing themselves, or other methods to deal with the situation at hand. So I do recognize that there are situations that exist that are just very, very difficult to process, and it's hard for a person not to be traumatized by them. But I do believe that we have the ability to process things differently, whether that's when the event actually occurs, or the good thing is that, let's say we didn't have the tools, mindsets, core beliefs necessary to resolve traumatic situations when the event occurred. We can actually adopt these tools, mindsets, core beliefs later in life, establish ourselves in them, and then go back to the situation in our past where the traumatic situation happened and resolve what happened then. It's not like you have to resolve it as and when it happens. You can do it later in the future when you feel more empowered with the necessary steps, tools, resources, and guidance to do so. So you're never stuck. You can always go back to your past and rewrite the situation and how you've processed it. Okay, maybe you couldn't control or change what happened externally, but we can adapt tools, mindsets, guidance to process those external events differently and basically undo the trauma, which will allow us to have a greater capacity to move forward in the things that we want to in the future, since we don't have those past things holding us back anymore. So this week, maybe try and recognize ways that you're holding yourself back. Maybe you just feel like you can't move forward with a certain action, and think, is that related to something that's happened in the past? Maybe you get triggered by something that wouldn't usually trigger somebody else. So a situation may occur and you process it in a certain way that's really intense, but other people in that same situation may not feel as intense emotions or thoughts based off of what has happened. That can be a sign that, okay, maybe there's trauma that's fueling my response in this situation, or my response to what's being said or what I'm experiencing externally. You can think about the emotions that are arising for you when you experience that trigger, and then think, okay, what's another time in my life where I've experienced these same emotions, or what's the earliest thought that I can have about my past that I experienced these intense emotions and I wasn't able to handle it. That can guide you to the root of that trigger, or where that trauma actually originated from, that's causing visceral responses in your current day that are out of proportion to the situation that's happening currently. And those different thoughts, mindsets, and emotions that may have arisen in you at the time, or are arising in you in this current day and age, can be a sign as to the different things that were causing us to experience trauma in the past, and now our current day selves, as we learn new tools, mindsets, and guidance to help us, can go back and help and heal those parts of ourselves that were unable to process that external situation at the time. So comment down below some of the core belief systems, thoughts, mindsets, and emotions that you've recognized this week popping up about yourself that are holding you back from moving forward in the direction that you want to go, or may arise during triggered states, because as we identify them, we can look to resolving them. My name's Yuna, and it's a pleasure to have shared this small portion of your journey with you.